In today's video, we're comparing two compact full-frame mirrorless cameras. On one side of the screen, you're looking at the Sony ZV-E1, and on the other side of the screen, you're looking at the Lumix S9. I'm using 24mm f1.8 lenses right now, using default picture profiles. Can you see a huge difference? I'll jump out of frame, I'll jump back in, and you can check out the autofocus performance on both cameras. Is there a difference in the skin tones on my bald head here? Let us know which one you like best and why in this blind test comparison. This is the Sony ZV-E1 and this is the Lumix S9. Let's get into it. Welcome back, folks. My name's Shane. In today's video, we're comparing the Sony ZV-E1 up against the Lumix S9. Now, both of these cameras are really popular for folks who want a small form factor, compact full frame camera system that will give you excellent results when it comes to video. This will focus mostly on video, but if you're thinking about buying one of these for travel, I'll talk more about that at the end of the video. Now, this video is not sponsored. I paid full price or a discounted price online for the Sony ZV-E1 over here, so I purchased it myself. And this black Lumix S9 that I'm using right now, I also purchased. Now, I was on the trip over to Japan for the Lumix S9 release, and that was the blue one that I've got. I ended up paying for this one as well, so consider me a customer for both of these camera systems. Let's do the all-important autofocus comparison between both of these cameras. So obviously Sony's well known for its autofocus performance, and Lumix was known for contrast DFD. But times have changed. Look at this. Jump out of frame, jump back in. They're both going to find me really responsive and reliably. The Sony is set to +5 and +5 on the speed and sensitivity, and the Lumix is on the default setting. So this is how the Lumix performs with human detection on, and at a distance, the Lumix is actually more reliable, whereas the Sony can sometimes get confused with the background the further you go back, but both are excellent. It's just a minor nitpick there with the Sony, but the Sony is better when there's more than one subject in the frame. So if that's important to you, the Sony's probably going to give you better results in that scenario. But if you're doing a talk to camera piece like this, they're both basically identical. You can be the judge for yourself. As I show you this A/B comparison, ducking out of frame, popping up, doing all the pointless tests. People go, these tests are pointless. No, they're not. It either works or it doesn't work. And you can see the difference in how it pulls focus to the background and then back to the subject, in this case, this bald guy right here. The first way that the autofocus system varies on both cameras is the ZV-E1 has a product showcase mode. So I can hold this up and not have to cover my face, and it's going to pull focus to the thing that's closest to the camera. Now, with human detection on the Lumix S9, I can still get the same sort of effect here. It's just that I have to hold it up closer to my face for it to pull focus. And it's just one of those things. For this particular test case scenario, the win here goes to the Sony. Look how responsive it is. To get around this on the Lumix, I've turned off human detection. So now the phase detection is going to work very similar to product showcase mode on the E1, only it's not going to be as snappy. I've tested this out a whole bunch of times over the last 12 months, and I still find having a one area box mode for this particular type of showcase works the best, or leave human detection on and then just cover up your face. But you can get a similar result out of the S9 just by turning off human detection. Color science on both cameras is excellent. I'm shooting in the natural picture profile on the Lumix S9 and the default no picture profile on the E1, which is my personal favorite straight out of camera profile. I also like picture profile 1, which is the movie one, but sometimes it can do weird things to your skin tones, which is why I just leave those things off. Where I prefer the Lumix S9 is shooting in its log mode, which is called Vlog. It's easier to grade and the camera auto exposes the scene properly for it, whereas on the Sony ZV-E1, you kind of have to expose to the right to get optimum exposure. And if you like to let the camera work in automatic mode, the win here goes to the Lumix S9, but you can still get amazing results out of the E1. And if you're shooting in manual mode, none of these nitpicks will really matter, but it's definitely worth mentioning. Odds are if you're watching this video, you're probably a video shooter on the fence deciding which one is best when it comes to shooting video. So that's why I'm here. I'm going to talk about what I love about both of these cameras, starting with the Lumix S9. The Lumix S9 really shines if you want to shoot above 4K. While the 4K 422 10-bit is fantastic out of this camera, if you're shooting 4K 50 or 60, it comes with an APS-C crop, which isn't ideal. This is something that the Sony doesn't do, so you get the full readout at 50 and 60p shooting 4K. but the advantage here goes to the Lumix above 4K. I'm shooting 5.9K with a 16:9 aspect ratio, which allows me to punch in on the timeline on a 4K timeline without losing resolution. So this is awesome. The Lumix S9 also shoots 6K with a 17:9 aspect ratio and 6K open gate, so you can crop the frame however you like. Where the ZV-E1 really shines is in its 4K mode. So 4K 24, 25, 30, 50, and 60 are all uncropped. And if you love to shoot with a full sensor readout, the E1 definitely gets the win. It also does 4K at 120 frames per second with a 1.1 times crop, which is pretty minimal. This is something that the S9 can't do whatsoever. So you sort of have to pick between having better slow motion tools in the E1 versus higher resolutions in the S9. At the end of the day, both of these cameras will give you amazing results, and if you can live with an APS-C crop, I think the Lumix S9 is amazing, but if you can't, the ZV-E1 will definitely get the win. For filmmakers though, the easy win here goes to the S9. Here's a quick comparison between 4K 50 frames per second on the E1 versus 4K 50p on the S9. So as you can see, I've got a 36mm field of view now using this 24mm lens, whereas the field of view should look exactly the same on the E1. Now let's take a look at the resolution difference punching in on a 4K timeline. So I'm shooting 5.9K on the Lumix S9 and still at 4K 25p on the E1. Now the 4K image out of the E1 is beautiful, but if you want to reframe and do some tricks in post to maybe get a punch in without losing resolution, this is where the S9 really shines. Here's a quick look at the difference between 4K at 100 frames per second on the right versus 1080p at 100 frames on the left. The 4K image on the right hand side from the E1 definitely gets the win here, but if you can live with shooting in HD, the slow motion out of the Lumix S9 is quite good. I've used it plenty over the last year or so shooting Bs with macro lenses, so up to about 150 frames per second, it looks pretty solid. The Sony can go all the way up to 240 frames per second in HD, so again the Sony gets the win in terms of frame rates. Overall, the image quality win goes to the Sony ZV-E1. Here's a quick look at some low light comparisons. Now I'm using the second native ISO on both cameras, so that's 4000 on the Lumix S9 and 12800 on the ZV-E1. This is all shot in the respective log formats. You can see with these particular settings that the noise floor looks almost identical. So this means if you need to shoot above 4000, the Sony gets the easy win. 12800 is a lot higher, yet it still has the same noise floor as the Lumix. Autofocus in a low lit situation is pretty terrible on both cameras when shooting log, so bring a light, it will solve all of your problems. Let's talk about the pros and cons of handling on both cameras. So the thing I really like about the ZV-E1 is that we get a nice grip already attached to the camera, unlike the S9, which has no grip. You've kind of got to buy the small rig grip to get a similar sort of feel. Once you get the small rig grip though, it's pretty nice, but this definitely gets the win. I also really love this three-way toggle switch over here that allows you to go from photo to video and S&Q mode all on the top, which is great. We get a record button on the top. You can also hit record on the screen, which gives it a slight advantage there over the Lumix S9. But the thing I really love about it is we get tally lights on this camera. So you know when you're recording. While you can set up the red record ring on both cameras, this is a lot easier to see outside on a bright sunny day to let you know that you're recording. So the tally light and overall body win here, I think, goes to the ZV-E1. It's not all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to the ZV-E1 because there's no command dial on the top. There's no easy way to get through your custom modes. You have to go through a digital menu, much like you would find on the FX3 or FX30. So it kind of retains a lot of the same sort of format of how the camera is used. And for that, I don't like it as much. But just for general purpose, switching between photo, video, and S&Q mode, this is excellent, but it's definitely not as good in many ways as the S9, which I'll cover now. Over to the Lumix S9. Now, as I mentioned, I've got the small rig grip on here, which gives you a much better grip than without it. This is about 30 Australian dollars or so to buy one of these, and it's definitely worth it. If you've got an S9, get this grip. It feels so much better in the hand without it. Without the grip, the easy win here goes to the E1, which I'm shooting this shot with right now. Having a physical command dial on top of the camera is awesome. It allows me to switch between any of the photographic modes, the movie mode, S and Q, and then I can recall 3 of my favorite presets. Now, while this camera doesn't give us any sort of tally lights for video recording, what I can tell you is that selfie screen is so much brighter on this camera, which is why the battery life on the S9 isn't quite as good as it is on the Sony. It's one of the reasons, at least anyway. So if you're going to be shooting out in the field, I can absolutely see the screen a lot easier than I can the Sony, even on the maximum brightness setting. So if that's important to you, the S9 here gets the win, but it also gets the loss when it comes to not having any sort of tally lights. By the way, folks, if you're enjoying the video, please leave a thumbs up. If you haven't already, subscribe, click the bell, hit all notifications. Let us know if this video has helped you in some way and whether or not you think it's fair if you own one or both of these 2 cameras. Thanks. When it comes to getting stable handheld footage, the win here easily goes to the Lumix S9. This is as bad as it's going to be for vlogging. Now, I'm not using a selfie stick or anything like that. I'm just holding the camera by the grip. And this is just the active IBIS, or in-body image stabilization. This is the camera at its worst. Now I'm going to show you the Sony at one of the better settings, and then we're going to turn on E-stabilization on the S9. Now let's take a look at the Sony ZV-E1. This is the active steady shot. So this is the second highest level of stabilization you can get out of this camera. And I'm just going to walk with this. And from all my tests with this, it's almost unusable in a scenario where the ground isn't completely flat. I'm not doing anything to favor either camera, but this is how it looks. But the great news is we do get sort of like a more enhanced mode called dynamic active steady shot. So let's try that. This is dynamic active steady shot, and I'll try my best just to hold the camera exactly the same way. You can see how much more aggressively it's cropped in. And in all of my tests so far, I don't think this looks better than the Lumix without any of the E-stabilization on. So this is as good as it gets on the Sony, but again, with a massive crop. Back to the S9 running the E-stabilization on standard. So this is going to correct a lot of the corner wobbles, and I can move at a much faster pace here on this uneven ground. That's right, uneven ground, and it's going to give me excellent results. So yeah, if you're looking for stable, straight out of camera footage you don't need to do anything in post-production with, then this easily gets the win. And look, there's next to no crops. It's crazy. It gets even better. Now you're looking at the E-stabilization on high, which is something that you can basically run with if you choose to. It's crazy how it works. Now again, this ground is completely uneven. I'm going up and down and all over the place. And even though this is cropped in quite a lot, it's still going to be buttery smooth. So if you like stable handheld footage, the easy win here goes to the Lumix. And again, it's not even close. Let's talk about overheating and thermal performance. So the great news is if you're shooting 4K up to 25 or 30p on both of these 2 cameras in most shooting scenarios, you're not going to have any problems with overheating, but there are a couple of caveats to that. So first up, if you're using this with a USB-C power delivery charger and you're going out over HDMI, you'll eventually see it. It does create more heat. Thus, the camera will overheat sooner. Some people have had the E1 overheat when using it as a webcam for longer than an hour, whereas I've been using the HDMI output on the Lumix S9 for well over an hour on live streams going into a HDMI capture device, and I've never seen any sort of overheating warning. So there's a difference there as well. The thing to remember with the Lumix S9 is it's very reliable shooting 4K at 25 or 30p, for example, but once you step it up to 5.9K or 6K open gate, it creates more heat and there's more potential there to have it overheat sooner rather than later. The same is basically true for the Sony ZV-E1. If you're shooting 4K, 24, 25 or 30p, it's going to be fine. Even outside on a day like today, it's quite warm right now. I haven't had any sort of overheating issue with it whatsoever. The white camera body probably helps, which is why I ended up going for this particular camera. But if you're shooting 4K 50 or 100p or 120p in S&Q mode, that's where you'll see some issues, again, sooner than later. So just keep those things in mind. Audio capabilities are a deal maker or breaker for some folks, so I'm going to explain the difference between both of these cameras. So both cameras give us a 3.5mm audio input for using a wireless pack. Now, I've been recording mostly on the Lumix S9 today, but the preamp in the Sony ZV-E1 is excellent. So audio quality wise, both get the win there in terms of the 3.5mm input socket. but that's where the similarities end. So the biggest difference here is that the Sony has a hot shoe mount, so you can use an XLR adapter from Sony, or this wireless pack hooked directly on top of the camera, whereas the S9 has a dummy shoe mount. There's no hot shoe connection whatsoever, so you're stuck using wireless packs. So if you're a content creator or someone working in the studio primarily and you want XLR audio, the Sony ZV-E1 gets the win, and it's not even close. Now, we also get another benefit to the E1, a headphone output socket, which is again something that's not on the S9. I think at the end of the day, if you're doing stuff like this where you might be working on your own with a wireless pack, both cameras will do a great job. The difference is if you're working in the studio. Now in the studio, I shoot with my S5 Mark IIX because I use a podcasting microphone to record directly into the camera, and that's something I can't do on the S9, so just keep that in mind. The win here goes to the Sony. Let's talk about some intangibles and just some fun stuff. Now, the Sony ZV-E1 has this really cool auto framing mode, which I find myself wanting to use more than I would like, but I also find that it doesn't always work very well. It's okay if you're walking back and forth towards the camera like this, but once you start moving around, sometimes it can get pretty confused depending on what's going on behind you. But overall, it's a really great feature, and it just makes your shot a little bit more dynamic. I've been using this feature a lot for behind the scenes content on the channel. Every time you see something move around and no one's there, it's this camera with the auto framing mode. So you can kind of finesse how this works and operates and looks and all that kind of stuff. So it's really cool. Where the Lumix S9 really shines is with real-time LUT. A lot of people misunderstood what this was at the time of launch, but it's so good. I've always used my custom picture profile anytime I'm in the studio. So many people say, what camera is that? It looks great. It's my take on the natural profile. I changed the saturation and contrast slightly, also adjusted the hue slightly more towards green, and the straight out of camera look looks beautiful, and I never have to mess with it again. And being that I've got other Lumix cameras, I can transfer that custom picture profile to other cameras in my collection, have them all match, and I don't have to do any sort of post-production. It's so good. At the end of the day, you've got to pick the right camera for the job. I think if you're looking for the best slow motion in either two cameras here, the win goes to the Sony. If you're looking for more stable footage and you're doing more filmmaking work, then I'm going to give the win to the Lumix S9. As a travel photo video hybrid camera, the win again goes to the Lumix. It just takes better photos or higher resolution photos, and the photo modes overall are better. And I also love hybrid zoom. If you're using a zoom lens, which a lot of people will do when they travel, I think the integration with the Lumix S9 gets the win. The Sony excels at all the fun stuff. So if you want auto framing, or if you are happy doing sort of post-stabilization in Catalyst Browse, then this is a really great choice. The slow motion out of the ZV-E1 is excellent, and I can highly recommend it for that particular use case. And the image quality up to 4K 60p or even 120 is amazing. So you're getting a really pro camera, but there's trade-offs and benefits to both. The great news is, even though I'm sweating balls out here today, neither camera has overheated throughout the day, and I've been out here for a long time. So I hope you found this video helpful. I'm going to give the overall win to the Lumix S9 for my use case. But if you're a content creator looking for a great camera that will give you more audio flexibility, I'm going to give the win here to the Sony ZV-E1. Thanks for watching.